I've had some mixed feelings on Pokemon Sword and Shield as a whole. I really enjoyed playing through them, and the new Pokemon introduced in Galar were some of the strongest designs to date. On top of that, the continuation of regional variants and even new evolutions for older Pokemon was a welcome surprise. Despite all of this, the Gen 8 games definitely had their shortcomings. For the main series' first venture onto home consoles, it felt a little underwhelming at times, with the graphics somewhat lacking and not enough emphasis placed on the truly enjoyable aspects of the game, such as the wild area. Taking this into consideration, I was very apprehensive about the 2 DLC expansions announced for the game, as I'm sure many other people were, so hopefully this video will provide some clarity and help you decide if the first of these expansions is for you. I'm going to try and keep this video as spoiler free as possible, although I will be briefly mentioning some new and returning Pokemon, so if you do want to go in fully blind, just bear that in mind. The video will be broken down into 3 sections: the positive aspects of the DLC, the negative aspects of the DLC, and my conclusions, which will answer the question, should you buy the Pokemon Sword and Shield DLC, Isle of Armor? After a thorough playthrough, I feel like I can safely say the positive aspects of this DLC do strongly outweigh the negatives. Whilst running through the wild area in the base game, I did feel a sense of emptiness in certain areas, as if there wasn't really much there for me to see, and a lack of clear definition for most of the environments. This is not the case in the Isle of Armor at all. The entire DLC is essentially another wild area, albeit a much larger and much more impressive one, with a lot more variety in its environments. This made it feel less like just another area of the base game, and more like a glimpse into what a true open world Pokemon game could look like, and that is perhaps the most exciting thing about this DLC to me. The environments in the Isle of Armor also felt much more connected than those in the base game. They're seamlessly intertwined with one another throughout the use of waterways or caves, which I think is something that was missing from the OG wild area. This also made traversing and exploring these environments much more enjoyable and added to the immersion of the game significantly. The selection of returning Pokemon is great, and the way that they are presented in the world gives you a true sense of their scale and in some cases how they interact with their environments. Wailord and Sharpedo are 2 notable examples of this. Wailord for its almost laughably huge size, and Sharpedo for the way that it will chase you down if you encounter one. The 2 new Pokemon introduced in this DLC, Kubfu and Urshifu, are excellently designed, as are the Galarian forms of both Slowpoke and Slowbro. The story of the DLC is charming, albeit compact and inconsequential. It's all about self-improvement as a Pokemon trainer in a dojo. It's fun and introduces some great new characters, mainly Mustard, but is nothing groundbreaking and should only take about 4 to 7 hours to complete, depending on how much you choose to explore during it. It's not overly difficult, but if you're not over-leveled, which I will get into in a bit, there are some battles near the end of the DLC which I did find much more challenging than anything in the base game. There's also some excellent new music throughout the DLC, however this does only boil down to a handful of tracks, most of which you won't come across again outside of the story, which is a damn shame, especially since I think some of these are amongst the best tracks in the entire series. I've used these tracks as transitional pieces between each segment of the video, so if you like what you hear, you'll probably like the music in the DLC. Pokemon can follow you again, which feels so great to have, especially for the first time in a main series game since Heart Gold and Soul Silver. This did leave me with a feeling of sadness upon realising that this does not translate over to the main region of Galar and leaves the game feeling oddly disjointed, but I do hope it's something that will be included in the Crown Tundra and all main series titles in the future. Finally, there's some nice new customization options for hair and clothing, but most importantly 2 of the most badass paint jobs for the Rotom bike going. There's also little features that have been added, such as being able to transform Dynamax Pokemon into Gigantamax Pokemon, and vice versa, through the use of soups which can be made in the dojo, which is a nice little added feature. Not necessarily needed, but it's nice to have, and will definitely decrease the time spent searching for Gigantamax Pokemon in raid battles. So, as I mentioned earlier, there aren't really too many negatives to be found in this DLC, and its minor issues boil down to stuff such as dodgy animations for certain Pokemon, which is directly translated from the main game, so are not necessarily the DLC's fault. However, there are a few things that are worth noting. On the odd occasion, Pokemon following me would get stuck on objects around the world. This literally happened like 2 or 3 times throughout the whole playthrough, so it doesn't really impact the gameplay, but if that sort of thing does annoy you, it's worth a mention. A significant issue is the level scaling. Now it's tied to your gym badges, so if you have completed the main game, the wild Pokemon will be capped at 60, except for Wailord, which was level 80. This is a huge problem, as if you walk in with a team of level 100 mons, then expect to wipe the floor with anything you encounter. This is such a shame, as the level scaling is excellent for newer players who have lower level teams, but for players like me who had a fully leveled team, it does not really accommodate that. So if you do want to have the most fun possible, I'd recommend capturing some of the newly added Pokemon and trying those out, as they'll be on par with what the level scaling in the DLC is capped at. Honestly, other than that, there isn't anything that wrong with the DLC itself. It's just the feeling of, should I be paying for this? Which may infuriate some people, as it's debatable whether most of this stuff should have just been in the base game from the beginning. That said, the Isle of Armor does add a lot to the game, and I think the experience I had playing it and the level of enjoyment I got out of it actually exceeded my experience with the base game. So for me, I think it was definitely worth buying. If you're a Pokemon fan and you enjoyed the base game, this is essentially a better, more condensed version of that, which expands upon some of the best aspects of the base game whilst adding some nice new or returning features as well. Basically, if you remotely enjoyed the base game, I think this DLC is definitely worth a purchase. Additionally, this DLC offered excellent exploration, and Game Freak has said the Crown Tundra will specifically focus on exploration and adventure, so if that's anything to go by, Crown Tundra should be an even better addition to the game. Most importantly, this DLC has made me interested in Pokemon again, and I can see me coming back to the Isle of Armor as a highlight of Sword and Shield. Now, if you didn't enjoy Sword and Shield and were disappointed with it on a technical level, I really don't think this DLC is likely to impress you. Unless you did really like the wild area, then it may be worth considering. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, or it just helped you decide whether or not you're going to pick up the Isle of Armor, please subscribe or leave a like, as I'll be producing much more content like this in the future. As always guys, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.